Uh, guys, I want to talk about Google Stadia.
What's that?
Exactly.
Stadia.
That's where I want to start. Do you realize there is less than 2 weeks until Google Stadia starts shipping out to users?
I literally
did not.
didn't.
You did not.
Until I read
Exactly.
that in the show notes, I'd forgotten all about it, to
Yeah.
be honest.
Okay, so there's my first question. The first question I have in the show notes here is, where do you feel like we are at in terms of awareness and excitement for its release? And I know you're exaggerating, Larry, when you say, what is Google Stadia?
Yeah.
But it's not far off, right?
No. In fact, my wife and I talked about game streaming earlier today. She wasn't aware of any of that technology coming up. And in that conversation, I did not even mention Google Stadia because it had fallen completely off my radar.
It's insane. It's so wild. Like Google, massive company, investing hella dollars into this as a platform, opening up first party studios to work on games that they have not yet revealed for this brand new platform that they're launching. Like, and yet here we are 2 weeks out. They own multiple ad platforms across the internet. And here we are, 3 people deeply ingrained in the gaming community, feeling like we haven't seen anything about it. Like
The first party games in particular, like anytime a new console is launching, like that is such a big thing. Like, what are the launch titles? And the fact that we're 2 weeks out and like we've not heard anything about those games still, like that's
you can play Destiny 2. It's 3 years old. 2 years old.
I don't know. It's so weird. Like and maybe part of it is the Kojima effect that like the entire conversation in gaming has been consumed with Death Stranding for the past week or so. But also like I think it's interesting. I'll draw a parallel to the launch of Apple TV Plus that happened recently, which is Apple's streaming service. These are 2 massive companies entering into an industry that they're not totally familiar with, and it shows how even companies of this size and with this much experience can fumble the ball when it comes to starting something new. Like, people literally didn't know how to access Apple TV Plus. They're like, how do I get to the Jason Momoa?
He says that in the past tense, like I know now.
Exactly. I had to read tutorials online to figure out how to do it, and to access shows that I'm not going to watch and I have no interest in watching. But I don't know. It's a sign that like this takes a lot of work and a lot of experience to get down, and like even Sony and Microsoft have only recently figured out how to do this right.
When you say this, what do you mean?
I mean, like launching a service not like this, but launching a service that people need to have a new frame of understanding. Like Microsoft is leading, I think, very carefully into what their next console is going to be. We have an idea, but they haven't really dropped it yet. Sony has bungled PlayStation View and like all these other things. What was their streaming service? PS Now.
Yeah. It's still
They bungled
going.
Which it's very much still going, but the awareness around it is not nearly what I think they hope it would be.
Roy Speedrun said Apple TV launched, and I expect the same comment about Stadia in 2 weeks.
Yes.
I just think entering a new world takes a lot of like, you need to really know what you're doing, and even Google and Apple sometimes don't know what they're doing because these are new worlds they're entering.
Well,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
With Apple, my sense is that that Apple maybe felt like we're Apple and we've released something new, and that's probably sufficient. But with
they
Google,
also launched with like unique programming, like exclusive programming that they thought would grab people. I don't even know if Stadia has that I'm aware of at the moment.
Oh,
yeah, we don't know about it. If they do, and maybe they'll go the Apex route and like, hey, we've announced this awesome thing day one. But with Google, it feels like that's deliberate. And we've talked about this a little bit before, but that's kind of Google's MO. They do these slow walking, soft launches of things, and just kind of wait to see if they're really going to take off or not. And with this particular, so like thinking about Google Plus and the and even Gmail, like they both had the same sort of launch process of, we got the beta users. All right, the next wave are the people that get invited in and invites. Boom, now the public can come in, and it never makes a huge splash. At the end of the day, Gmail was successful, Google Plus was not. But I just don't think that sort of like soft walking into a thing is going to work in this particular industry.
Is the 2 weeks, so the thing launching in 2 weeks, is that just beta access?
That's the Founders Edition. So that
Founders Edition.
Yeah,
okay.
That's the controller and all that. But even that is in stages. So if you pre-ordered, it's being shipped out in waves. So even if you pre-ordered, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get your Founders Edition, which I guess is the controller and the Chromecast. You're not even guaranteed to get that on the day and date of the launch. And I think what's interesting here is how we're talking about it as a product, right? Like we're comparing this a lot to services with PlayStation View, PlayStation Now, Gmail, Google Plus, like whereas I feel like they tried to announce it as something that we would see more as like a console launch in a way. Like, yes, we understand it's a service, but I think they had a recognition that people love hardware. They love being able to like feel what they're purchasing. And so, hey, here's a controller. Well, you understand that all other controllers will work on this, ones that you probably already have in your home, but we're going to launch this controller alongside it. And I really don't know if anybody has figured this out. Like Game Pass, I wouldn't say was a wild success right at the start. I think people liked the concept, struggled to understand the concept particularly well at its launch, and it's since grown. It's been fostered in a really great way. Sony is light years away from even starting to figure out how to do this kind of shit. Like,
yeah,
they have been releasing details about the PlayStation 5 via Wired.com, guys. Like Sony is not some grand master of divulging information, right? And the two examples you gave, Larry, despite the success of Gmail, like there are tons of examples of things that Google has bungled completely, from both a product standpoint and a services standpoint.
Google Plus, Google Wave.
Yeah, you're
Google
much more
Glass.
locked into that. Google Glass, yeah. And even Apple. Like, Apple is still riding the waves of being the product kings of, what, 6-7 years ago?
Sorry.
But they're not really great at anything outside of iPhone launches anymore. Like, I don't feel like the iPads create as much excitement. I don't feel like there's enough difference between like the watch models to create a ton of excitement. And I think you've got your like obviously hardcore Apple fan base who's gonna go after all of those things, just like people voraciously went after Google Plus when it launched. But
yeah, what kind of loser would do that?
Exactly. But you're not going to find success in these markets just by speaking to your most dedicated fan base. You've got to extend beyond this. And it's just, this is something that I feel like gamers should really, really care about, that Google has not allowed us to care about because they haven't kept it in front of us.
No, they've done a pretty terrible job of like, we're plugged into this world and we didn't know that it was or I forgot that it was coming in 2 weeks, which is even worse than not knowing in the first place.
Yeah.
Like I had to look it up. I knew it was coming out this month, but for the purpose of the topic, I was like, it's like Google Stadia release date. And even when you do that, guys, you're typing in Google Stadia release date, and you know how Google will serve you like an auto response answer? All it says in the autofill is November 2019. No date, no nothing. You have to like actually search it and get the actual date. So it's like Google can't even figure out their own, which that's served to you through like an automated system. But still, the point is like this is something that when it was announced, I mean, I was on this podcast saying this is going to be the biggest thing for games since online connectivity. And I still believe that as the concept. I think the concept of streaming games is going to be as revolutionary as online gaming. I thought Stadia was going to be more central to that shift. And it just doesn't. I don't know if it's that they don't care, if it's that they don't understand. Like, but Google's got the money to go pay people who do understand. So that doesn't seem like a great excuse.
Yeah. Part of the problem for me is personally, in terms of like having confidence in the idea, is not so much the idea, but Google itself. Google, because of, I mean, it operates, like you said, Larry, like its rollouts are kind of very old school. Not old school, but like old school just means something different in Silicon Valley at this point because things move so quickly, but like old school tech.
Boomer.
But like Google has, at any given time, Google has so many different projects and has so many different plates spinning in the air and is very willing to drop plates at a moment's notice. They've done, obviously, you mentioned a couple of products they've done that, or services they've done that with in the past. I don't know if, like, I don't feel like I want to invest in a service and then it's just shut down and I lose access to the games that I would access through that service. And I'm afraid that if this doesn't work out for Google, they'll just kind of drop it.
Yeah. But to be honest, the only company that I have confidence in, and I'm going to be written off as a fanboy here, but the only company that I'm really confident in is Microsoft.
Oh, Microsoft.
Microsoft. Yeah.
Say it all together.
PlayStation has had a tendency to do the same thing, to have these like really innovative new ideas. Granted, they do a better job of pushing them, but if it's not working out, they'll just let that thing die quietly.
Yeah, I think even that is an overstatement of how committed Sony is to even pushing them. Like, they've let off the gas multiple times leading into the launch of things. I mean, I think VR lacked a lot of push there at the home stretch of release. PlayStation View I don't know if PlayStation View ever had a push outside of
no.
They were like and powers. All right, nobody clapped for that. We'll be abandoning this very shortly. Like, you know, so I think even that's. But Sony's whole strategy is we're just going to make a better box, and that's worked for them up to this point, and it's probably going to continue to work for them in the future. So I don't know if it's necessarily where they need to be strong right now.
Yeah, but I'm very optimistic about Microsoft Project X Cloud. Is that what it's called?
Yep.
Or is it just X Cloud?
Project X Cloud, I think.
Thanks.
Project X Cloud Games Pass.
and I don't want to write Stadia off. I may get excited once it comes out, but right now there's no reason for me to be excited. Like it's a cool service, but someone else is offering it, and I know what kind of catalog theirs is going to include. Stadia, I just have no idea.
Yeah, I also think there's a lot of confusion around how exactly it's rolling out, like who's going to have access to the actual service, because okay, you're shipping out Founder stuff on this date, but can I still access this from YouTube? Like, can I still access it from my browser? What phones are going to be supported here at the start, or is it only for these Founder members who are signing up? Like, I think there's a lot of confusion around that rollout too. That, I mean, it's what we've seen in gaming all around. In some ways, Google is fitting right into the gaming culture, in the sense of like, here's our trifurcated launches that make absolutely no fucking sense. If you're in tier 1, you get it here, tier 2 then with this, and then tier 3 get it then. Like, that's what we've seen as a trend across the spectrum, but I don't think Google's doing it intentionally. I just think they really have no idea how to launch this thing. But Cody, to your point about they're constantly spinning plates and willing to let things fall, like, this is going to sound strange. Like I'm saying one thing, but I'm not sure if gaming culture is the place you want to do that.
I know. Like,
it's so large, but yet the conversation is so like niche and packed in tight. Like, we all kind of have the same channels that we go to, that things get mega amplified. Like, yeah, you can abandon Google Plus because I'm sure there's people who love social media and stuff like that, but there's not like social media aficionados out there and like really deep fan cultures around them that are going to get bummed when you, or just outright pissed when you abandon something. I just don't think gaming is the space you want to go in and be like, we're going to try and have a really quick ripcord out if it doesn't go our way immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is YouTube gaming still a thing?
They're making another big push on their
Okay.
live streaming side. I don't know. I think YouTube gaming as a brand is gone, but I know they just signed over at least one, like, I'm trying to remember. I think he's with 100 Thieves as well. He's like a content producer for 100 Thieves. They signed him over exclusively to stream over on YouTube. Everyone thought he was going to go to Mixer, but yeah. Anyway, yeah. I feel like you were going somewhere there.
The reason I brought it up was, as you're saying, like, is gaming the place to do that kind of rollout and that kind of abandonment if it comes down to it? I feel like you're not going to get more than one crack at this and doing it well.
Mm-hmm.
And in a lot of ways, they've already taken their crack at it with gaming. But yeah, if they launch this and then just mothball it, like, that's it. I think this is their one shot, and they got to do it well. I'm just not confident that that's what's happening.
Yeah, I think that the concept, I mean, I think we all like the concept and like the actual idea of it. It's just a hard thing to sell, because you're right, Luke. Like, in some ways there seems to be confusion about like there's a confusion, I guess, about the launch of it and also just the concept itself. Like, how do you sell something that is, they're trying to sell as if it's hardware, in an industry that loves hardware, but the core idea of it is not hardware. The core idea of it is to expand the concept of the hardware you're playing it on. It's not coming other than you get a controller, but you can play it with any controller. You don't get a box. You can play it on any box. It's kind of a hard concept to just like sell in a traditional setting, like a showcase, like what Microsoft will probably do with the next system it's doing. Microsoft seems to be taking steps towards this future. Well, I mean, we've talked about this before. While Google is like blasting off to the moon with no parachute.
Yeah, well, and all of that with the parallel recognition that they are trying to monetize this thing as if it is a traditional.
Yeah.
So yes, you're paying for access to it, but hey, you want to play Watch Dogs 2 or Watch Dogs Legion, sorry, $60. You know, like, they're selling it like it's a physical product or like a downloaded product, when in reality it's just $60 access to a server that has the game on it.
Yeah.
It's wild. So we're kind of touching where I want to end this, and I want us to talk on a scale from 1 to 10. How comfortable are you with the long-term outlook of Stadia? And on a scale from 1 to 10, and I guess you can kind of roll this into this as well. Like, what do you think the number you give in the first response means for the future outlook of the concept as a whole, and especially as Xbox gets into rolling out their own similar service?
For Stadia in particular, the long-term outlook, I feel, is like, I would put it at a 3. Like, I have very low confidence. I'm not at a 1, like, this is definitely going to fail. But I'm going to have to see something big to make me think that this is going to be around for a while. From a company that, as I love Google products, but they have a reputation with me of not sticking around with products. But for the outlook of the concept as a whole, like, I think that's a 10, man. I think this is where the future is moving. It's just a matter of who's going to get us there.
Yeah, you don't think that Stadia being the first but to break the surface tension of the water, cannonballing into this pool is going to affect that?
I don't think so, because I think it would be different if it was Sony coming out here and doing it poorly, or Microsoft coming out poorly. But for me, like Google being someone that's outside the gaming sphere, coming in and failing at gaming, I don't think that's going to hurt the concept.
Yeah, I mean, I'd actually probably put my confidence a little bit higher, probably around like a 4 or 5, only because I think and we don't know how much Google has invested in this, but I would have to imagine the buy-in is just significantly higher than for other services they've kind of launched before.
That's true. Getting first-party games onto this platform is probably more costly than launching Wave, where you could collaborate with some spreadsheets.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot more on the line, so I think they might try to stick around with it a little bit more. But I do think, I mean, we've seen plenty of examples where the first to the punch isn't exactly always the first to like break through. And so I think it will be someone. I have confidence in the concept as a whole. I don't know how you want. I hate kind of putting a numerical value on something like that.
Putting them in here.
So I'd probably put that at like an 8 or a 9, because I do think this is the way that gaming is going. I think I have a lot more confidence that Microsoft will probably take this over time and kind of commit to it and make it kind of the norm. Plus, I mean, Kojima said everything's heading towards streaming, gaming, movies, TV, so you know it's got to be true.
That's true. I put my future outlook for Stadia around a 3 as well with you, Larry. And while your impassioned argument about the money that Google's putting behind it is almost convincing enough to make me move that metric, I also think Google has enough money that they can look back in 2 years and be like, what was this Stadia line item again? We're not really quite sure what that was all about. And it's mostly because I see them missing the flagship first-party exclusive thing that they're developing in-house. They have total control over, that shows we are committed to this long-term. There are games that are going to be exclusive to Stadia, but I don't think any of them are like what we would traditionally deem as like AAA experiences.
Yeah, and that's something you have to announce. Like, I would have liked to know more and more consistently. Mm-hmm. Like even the games that they did announce, I haven't heard anything about them since they just showed a screenshot on a big projector.
Because at this point, it almost feels like the sell is, hey guys, play all of these games you can play literally anywhere else at a much more unreliable fashion. And I just don't, I guess the sell is you can play these games wherever you go, and that's something that certainly appeals to me, but I just feel like it needs to be more than that, because Switch is doing a fantastic job of giving me tons of gaming options on the go. Mm-hmm. Mobile gaming, it continues to improve, and I really don't feel like blowing through a data plan to play a shittier version of a game I can play on a console, you know. But I do also worry about the outlook of this as the future of it, that people are going to look and be like, Stadia already tried that. Because I don't think the public at large has the nuance to look and say, Google tends to pick up and abandon really quickly. And they're just going to be like, oh, well, didn't Google try that? And they're like the biggest tech company in the world and it didn't work. Why would it be any different with any other company? And so I would put future outlook at a 7.
The one thing about that prevents me from going with you there is the fact that Microsoft is on this. Because Microsoft launched Xbox with this vision of the constantly online gamer, and everybody hated it universally. Not universally, but just about. It wrecked their launch, right? But here we are doing exactly what they said we'd be doing.
But it's different. Like, even when they announced that, the advantages of it were so kind of abstract in terms of how it benefited us as people who play games. Whereas I think the value proposition here is a lot clearer at the top in terms of, play games anywhere. You can stream it on any device. You don't need a high-end computer to play these games at the top specs. Like, I think that is a clear value proposition. that if it's bungled, I don't know. Like, I think the messaging about always online is a lot clearer now. I agree with you. Xbox is doing the same exact thing. They're just talking about it in a way that's a lot different. It feels a lot different.
Yeah. We didn't catch it, but earlier Roy Speedrun said, I mean, realistically, what percentage of people have internet good enough for Stadia? And do we know what kind of internet that's going to require yet?
Yeah,
Or
they
we
announced.
They released information on that.
Let me look it up. Google Stadia network specs.
I mean, it's a legitimate question, though.
Yeah.
When we talked about this originally, we talked about the infrastructure that needs to be put in place to be able to even make it work for most people.
Google recommends 10 megabits per second, which will deliver 720p video with stereo sounds.
Okay.
Which I don't think is totally unreasonable. But again, you can play anywhere else. You can even play in handheld on Switch most games at higher
720p.
than at 720 and docked at 900p for a lot of those games. Yeah. At a much more reliable clip. Like, can't imagine playing this game riding in a car down the road on a phone and maintaining a stable enough connection for it to work. I can take my Switch with me and it's going to be fine. So,
the use that my wife and I kicked around earlier may be unique to us. I don't know, but I don't even think about this service as like an on-the-go service so much as I think about, oh, cool, we can not buy 2 Xboxes next go around and still play the same game together.